I'm right across the street from his childhood home, actually, right now. And
you see golf balls over your house every now and then. And then you just try to throw footballs over your house. Yeah, don't tell your mom, but that happened.
Don't ever tell her. She might be watching actually right now. But, but
no, that was actually my friend that did that.
Yeah. I thought I saw that out the window, but
I love the connection there from that you made from Psalm 119:9 to personal discipline, and how trying to remind yourself of things that it's easy to get distracted from, especially in our modern life. It feels like there's more and more distractions every year. It reminds me of something Dad used to say when we were playing Little League or any sports. He always said, "You play the way you practice."
Amen.
And there's there's also that saying, people don't rise to the occasion, they fall to the level of their training.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Deion Sanders said the other day, like, we practice like we play. We practice like we play.
He got that from me.
He did. That's what I was going to say. The shout out is to the Klingerman family is what it is. I mean, that was been y'all's motto since I was a kid.
Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Stories, the forum where we interview people of faith and find out how God is writing the stories of their lives. So, Caleb, for the last several months, we've been boning up on the Old Testament. We've been doing our Bible discussions podcast, and we've been looking at all these different characters in the Old Testament. We've seen how God's been using the most bizarre people in all different ways to accomplish all these amazing things for him. And so we've seen people like all the way from Moses and Abraham and Job, Joshua, the judges. I mean, the judges were a crazy mix of people. Ruth and Nebuchadnezzar, Esther and Cyrus. There's like this a whole list of people we could name. And so, Caleb, since you're the official historian of Biblocus, I thought you could tell us
prestigious title.
So did God give us the Bible just so we could memorize that list of famous people that I just rattled off, or what?
Well, when you're in sixth grade, yeah. Sometimes there's a tendency to think that biblical history and biblical heroism ended when John put down his pen on Patmos. It can be easy to think that way, right? We're 2,000 years later, and but that's not the case. We continue to be a part of the same covenant, the same relationship between God and his people. And the Bible is there. What we've been when studying, every episode, we're trying to apply it to our lives. So God gave us this because we can continue to live out this faith even in heroic ways today.
Yeah, and that's one of our goals with Bible Stories podcast is we want to produce a forum where people of faith can come on and share how their love of God, their love of the Bible has changed their lives, and then they can share that story about how God's working in their lives with all the people around the world on this great podcasting forums that we have now, and show people how God shaped their lives. And so we want to learn about these people. We want to learn about the people that have molded them, because the Bible's all about relationships. And so we want to learn about the relationships in the lives of the people we interview and find out how other people shaped them and how God worked through those people to shape their lives. And so even though this is the first episode of Bible Stories, we're starting off strong with our first guest, who is Michael McKenry, former Major League Baseball player, present-day broadcaster for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm excited about where this all could go for you guys. I think it's incredible that you guys are doing it together. Knowing you guys for quite some time, I think it's going to be a hit, and too, what better way to do it than father and son? Really, really neat.
Yeah, we've been having a good time doing the Bible discussions forum where we've got 30 videos out now. We've covered almost the whole Old Testament. We got, I think, 9 episodes left to cover out the minor prophets. And we're trying to live out the Shema, which is in Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 9. Talks about how, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. And love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. And then teach it to your children as you walk along, as you sit at the table, as you get up in the morning, as you go to bed at night. So Caleb and I, as a father and son, we're trying to live that out on the podcast and kind of share between generations, what we think about the scriptures. So it's been really
That's
great.
incredible. I love it. Thank you for making me a part of it. I'm humbled and honored and looking forward to a really cool discussion. Every time I talk to you guys, I learn something, so I'm excited.
Well, it's funny you say that because most people say, hey, I thought this was the first episode. So I got to tell on myself, right? Because last time we did an hour and a half, it was me and Michael. And I was like, Michael, I didn't press record. And Michael's like, oh, come on, press record. Maybe you did. And I press it and it starts counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we get down there. And you remember what you said when it got down to 0?
I don't.
Take 1. That was great. So, yeah. But hey, Michael, so let's do this. So like around my house, like you don't need any introduction. Okay. Like, you grew up across the street from my parents. My kids watched you, go into the pros and playing baseball on TV. My dad was like your biggest fan in the world. And when he was in the nursing home, I had to go in with a Roku stick and tap into the Wi-Fi in the nursing home, and so he could watch you play back in, I think it was 2013 or 12 or whatever. And so, and you are not just in my home, but around Pittsburgh, you're like a fixture. It's amazing, like as mostly, 3 years, parts of 3 years that you played there, but you became such a crowd favorite. People there love you. You're on the broadcast team now. People still love you. It's been a great ride, I think, for you and for the city of Pittsburgh. So, but for a lot of the people who are watching our podcast, they're like, who's Michael McKenry? So like, can you give the essential Michael McKenry? Like, what do you want? What would you say the essential Michael McKenry?
Well, first off, we grew up right next to each other. I'm surprised I didn't break a bunch of windows and stuff. I think because your mom would have beat me with a broomstick. But, I was very fortunate to have, people around me like you guys. You guys were always great to me. I was rambunctious all over the place as a kid, usually doing something outside and usually causing a little bit of mayhem, but usually with the ball in my hand. And, that started the journey of a dream I had since I was 5 to make it to the major leagues. And I sought out to do that when I was first given a glove. And my grandpa, who I thought was my grandpa, ended up not being my grandpa, found out later on, gave me a glove and said, you're going to make it to the big leagues. And my thought was I was going to do it with that glove. Obviously, it was probably from Walmart or something. It wasn't going to make it to the major leagues, but it put in my head and manifested something that I truly believed. And I really believe in the power of word and how strong it can be because I was a major leaguer. And then I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. I am in the Hall of Fame, in 2 different Hall of Fames, Farragut Hall of Fame and MTSU. I didn't specify maybe that I wanted to be in Cooperstown, but I do say all the time, like, draw your journey out and decide what you want to do and then run and don't stop running, because along the way you're going to fall, you're going to stumble, you're going to do a lot of things, but you're going to end up somewhere, maybe not the perfect answer, the perfect beautiful picture you painted as a kid, but you're going to be somewhere where you could be, man, I did the work, I'm satisfied with what I did. Now I can deviate. But all that knowledge, everything you've created, will help you deviate into something better. And that's kind of where I am today. Played 7 years in the big leagues, 12 years overall. Went just about everywhere on the planet, it seemed like. Played overseas. And it's been a journey, but it's been a blast. And, that process is something I wish I would have taken a little bit more time to enjoy and to just watch the surroundings. But that process did bring me to Pittsburgh. And because the way I was treated, they embraced me. The Yinzer and people is very similar to the y'all. So me and my wife say we're y'allsers. And we came to Pittsburgh, and the grit, the hard-nosed, steel worker mentality just hasn't left. Everybody I've met is willing to put in the work. They're willing to say yes. They're willing to show up. And I felt like that fit my personality and my wife's personality. So we actually live in Pittsburgh now. Do miss Knoxville. Do miss the old blue shutter house that's across the street. And I know my mom does because our moms have gotten really close over the years, and a lot of that has to do with, when it comes to the Bible and Christ and the relationship, even go to the same church now. So, yeah, it's really cool how things can come around full circle. And once again, I'm really excited about this, humbled, and it is a different arena, but I think it's the most important arena that I don't get to share enough in a long form.
Cool.
All right, thanks.
Hopefully that helped.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Great. That's great.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Michael, you got possibly the coolest nickname in all of sports, Michael the Fort McKenry, which sounds...
I'm not going to lie, that is the coolest nickname in sports. I got really lucky. It could have been something really bad, but they nailed that, and I really appreciate it too. Because could you imagine if something sticks? Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, he's a little Oompa Loompa or something. No bueno. So.
What's the story behind that? It sounds totally natural once you hear it, but somebody had to think of it. Was there a commentator or a certain play where that sort of came from?
So I took, for people that don't know baseball very well, the catcher is kind of the commander-in-chief of the field of the players, right? So I'm the only person that's not in the field of play. So I'm actually looking at everything. I'm the closest to the dugout. So I have a lot of communication and a lot of understanding what's coming from the dugout. So I'm using this terminology when commander, right? Because I need to command the troops to go left, right, all these different things. But the one thing I took more pride than anything was keep the ball in front of me. Don't allow any doubt in my pitcher's mind or any excuse to let a ball get behind me. It was instilled in me when I went to college, had a really hard-nosed catching coach. And that kind of carried on throughout my career. So when I was in Pittsburgh, when I first got there, here I am. I think I was the 8th catcher that year. Got traded from Boston to there. And Bob Walk, who's a history buff, said, man, he's like Fort McKenry. Nothing's going to get by him. And Fort McKenry in Baltimore is where the Star-Spangled Banner was written.
Right.
So being a huge military buff, being a military representative for almost 12 years in professional baseball and still giving back to all types of different veterans and everything else when it comes to their causes, that humbled me. And it's only grown my passion to help them. But being, a part of something that big and then now being a part of USA Baseball and coaching and, I got to manage this past year for 18U in the round robin before they go off and played for trials. It's special. And it is humbling. Once again, if you don't understand that story, Britain is just firing bomb after bomb. And when the cloud smoke went away, Fort McKenry is still standing and the flag was just waving in the air. And that's how the Star-Spangled Banner was written. So humbling. And the coolest part is in 2011, later on in the season, we went to Baltimore. So this is really early on. I got the nickname. We went to Baltimore right after my first home run, which kind of established. Greg Brown just nailed the call. It still gives me tears to today. When I hear it, Tim and Bob Walk, he makes that call, and then I get to go to Baltimore and raise the flag and get a behind-the-scenes tour of Fort McKenry. Something I'll never forget. The only difference is it's spelled with an H. Mine's spelled with a K.
Yeah.
But it's something I thought, if this is, a godsend, I have to run with it because it really did feel like something that was, deemed I have to. So when I walk around Pittsburgh, most of the time I don't hear Michael, I don't hear McKenry, I just hear Fort. They just yell Fort. And so it's really stuck, and I'm glad it did because, like I said, it could have been a lot worse. So that's the story behind it, and I think you can, look throughout the Bible too. Just to touch that spot is like, what's the greatest place you want to put your foundation? You want to build your fort around, Jesus and his teachings, and I think it's a representative of how I try to help kids and different people. Is like, hey, how are we going to build this properly and on the right foundation? Because we want to build it on Christ. It doesn't matter about your fort. It matters if it's going to crumble. Where's it crumbling to? And it should always crumble back to him.
Yeah, I saw you posted, I think on X, maybe today or yesterday, some dude in a convenience store that you dropped in, and he's like, the fort was in my store, and you copied it out, and I saw it because I follow you, but I thought that was pretty cool.
It was humbling. I just ran into a store, and he just looked at me like, are you? And I'm like, are you? Are you? It's like the Spider-Man meme, like,
yeah.
And then he was like, you the fort? And I'm like, yeah. And so we had a cool conversation. That opens up a lot of cool doors for me too. I mean, to have just community with people or fellowship and get to hear a little bit of their story. And you guys will probably think this is neat. He actually shared about going to games. They were season ticket holders. They didn't have a lot, but him and his dad always took about 25 games and went together. And how many times I've heard that, and this makes me seem like I'm getting old, and I don't necessarily love that, but I'm seeing kids that are 19 to 30 tell me about when they were 8 and they remember a certain game and they just lost a parent. But that memory brought a smile to their face, and it kind of brought them back into that moment. You talk about humbling, man. That's special. Really, really special.
That's cool. I was looking this up the other day in preparation. Do you know how many guys played in the MLB in 2024? I
don't. I'm pretty sure the total's almost, like, overall, about 180 years. I believe it's about 26,000.
And overall. Okay. Yeah,
overall.
that's cool.
Yeah, so you couldn't fill up. I mean, you talk about being empty at Neyland Stadium. I mean, you could talk about 110,000 people in Neyland. 26 plus thousand have played in the major leagues, and that's just a cup of coffee, put on a uniform on the roster. So that's kind of remarkable, and that's also adding in the Negro Leagues now. They just did that a couple years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Michael's talking Knoxville trivia there for you because that's where we are. We're in Knoxville, where Michael grew up. I'm right across the street from his childhood home, actually, right now. And
you see golf balls over your house every now and then. And then you just try to throw footballs over your house. Yeah. Don't tell your mom, but that happened.
Don't ever tell her. She might be watching actually right now. But,
no, that was actually my friend that did that.
Yeah. I thought I saw that out the window, but
we did all kinds of stuff like that.
I shot off a rocket out there with the kids. Yeah. Shot it up and it's coming down. She's like, that better not land on my roof. Yeah,
we have that on video.
Yeah, you guys used to always put together like the coolest little science projects, and you never knew what was going to happen. I'd hear about it and I'd be like, just kind of looking out the window, like, what's going to happen? So cool, so fun.
Hey,
your dad's train set.
Oh, I'm working on it. I keep it in my house. When you're in town, you got to come by and see it this Christmas. I'm getting ready to set it up.
Done. Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Be great. Hey, you mentioned golf, and that reminds me, you're not the only pro in the McKenry household. Your uncle, who I was a little older than me, but who who was living across the street there when I was a kid, he was also a golf pro.
He had a chance. Yeah, he got certified as a PGA pro, and the way the process works in the PGA, you do have a minor leagues. You play in these kind of smaller tournaments, but you have to get your own sponsorships. Well, somebody was willing to sponsor him, give him the money to kind of push forward, and he was able to qualify. I mean, he was breaking club records everywhere he was working as a club pro, and I wish he would have followed that dream, but he was a homebody. He didn't want to travel and chase that, so I respect that too. You got to make that choice, and he did. But yeah, he was extremely good. I got to caddy for him when I was really, really young, when he broke a club record because he was about to leave to move to Memphis to be with another club. And I believe it was somewhere in the 60 range, like 61 or something like that he ended up beating. And I remember he hit a ball off the cliff. We had to walk down the cliff, and he hit it back onto the green. I'll never forget. It was like a movie. Really, really neat stuff.
That's great. So I've got a little surprise for you. We put a little presentation together. So I'm going to pull it up, and we're going to talk some Michael McKenry history here, okay? Let me get this presentation pulled up. I got to share it here so you can see it. Just a second.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we're about to put on the screen here. These are 3 baseball cards that you actually gave to me and each of my 2 brothers one year.
No way.
For Halloween. Yeah, we were trick-or-treating in this neighborhood here, my grandma's neighborhood, and we went across the street to your parents' house, and you handed out some minor league cards that you had signed and written Bible verses on. Is that
can you see the presentation, Michael?
I can, yeah.
Okay, so we got 3 cards there. You remember those teams?
I do. The Modesto Nuts, the Colorado Springs Sky Sox, who I've played for twice, once with the Rockies, once with the Brewers, and that's the Tulsa Drillers, my AA team. It was the last year of that stadium, and my wife sat in a seat, and it broke, and why that's funny is my wife's 5'1", about 108 pounds, so she's tiny. But yeah, they were letting it fall apart. Yeah, I remember all those. That's consecutive years too, 08, 09, and 10, and 10's the year I made my debut.
So you had these prepped for my kids. We were waiting on them. Now you have, on the first one, you have Psalm 119:9, and then on the middle one you have Colossians 3:23, and then on the one on the right you've got God bless and your signature on all of them. So now we're going to put you to the test. Do you remember the verses? Remember what they say?
Yeah, Psalms 19:9. Yeah, keep your young man keep his way pure. I can't remember exact off the top, but
that's close.
Yeah.
How can a young man keep
his way pure by your degrees? Yeah.
Yeah.
I that was something I still go to when I'm thinking about my discipline. When I'm thinking about the things I don't need to forget, because too often we live in this hunky-dory Christianity or religious world where everything's easy, and it does take discipline. It does take times when you don't want to read the Bible, and I constantly go back to that. So I rotate from that to Colossians 3:23. I'm a natural people pleaser. I extend myself way too much. I try to do too much. Not so much that I can get the glory. I just think it's maybe from my mom. My mom is one of the sweetest people on the planet, and she always overextends. I think that's just what I knew. So Colossians 3:23, work as though you're working for the Lord, not human beings or human race, depending on what you're reading. And then when I write God bless, I just always try to remember why my life is blessed, and I'm hoping to bless someone else as I give that card. I also do Proverbs 3:5 now. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, all your mind. So
yeah.
those are the
love
three I
that.
rotate, and every now and then Hebrews 11:1. Stand strong in the faith. It's just a paraphrase.
I love the connection there from that you made from Psalm 119:9 to personal discipline, and how trying to remind yourself of things that it's easy to get distracted from, especially in our modern life. It feels like there's more and more distractions every year. It reminds me of something Dad used to say when we were playing Little League or any sports. He always said, "You play the way you practice."
Amen.
And there's there's also that saying, people don't rise to the occasion, they fall to the level of their training. And it's exactly like that. Like when the rubber hits the road, if there's a crisis in your life and you're never in the Word, you're never praying, the day before that you might feel like everything's okay, but once there's a crisis and you haven't been putting in any of the effort there to build the relationship with God, then things can fall apart quickly.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Deion Sanders said the other day, like, we practice like we play. We practice like we play.
He got that from me.
He did. That's what I was going to say. The shout out is to the Klingerman family is what it is. I mean, that was been y'all's motto since I was a kid. But yeah, I mean, I think too often we think we separate things in the sense of when it comes to our walk with Christ. It's no different than if you need to lose weight, you got to go eat better. You got to work hard. You got to do the things you have to do, but that takes time, right? It's the same way. And then if you fall off that wagon, right, you're putting yourself in maybe a vulnerable place, and you have to kind of reel back, be an honest evaluator, and then kind of build yourself back into that. But if you have a foundation, it's easier to find that path, right? When you do start to stray, because everybody's going to fall, left, fall right, maybe even fall backwards, fall forwards, except Jesus. So we have to understand that we're not going to be perfect, but we need to have a discipline. And sometimes it's a forced discipline. Sometimes I hate reading the Bible. I'm like, I just don't want to be told the truth right now because it's just too hard.
Man, that's true.
Or at the same time, like sometimes I have a really hard time praying, and I sometimes force feed myself to write, and I don't share it. I usually delete it, but at least I can say like I got it out and I thought through it. But the one game changer for me is, and I think it's a test to so many things throughout the Bible, is music. Music is my separator. When I was a kid, having multiple learning disabilities, having a hard time in school, having a hard time speaking in front of people, the audio side of everything helped me because I had an audio perception disorder. So like I couldn't sound out words, and there's a lot of things I couldn't do, but I could put on headphones and rock so many things in life. So that's always been my, how do I slow down? How do I kind of find my path forward? So I just throw on music. And man, you talk about God speaking. I feel like, they say we're going to sing in heaven, constantly. And I really believe it's because like that's where the real voice of the Lord comes from.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we got that, drew that verse out of Psalms there, which, a bunch of praise songs that David wrote.
Amen.
Mostly. A lot of other
Amen.
people too. But
So when I think of Michael McKenry and discipline, there's two stories come to my mind. One, you came to one of my boys' Little League games because your brother was coaching the team over in Rocky Hill League. Little shout out for Rocky Hill.
Is this still going, by the way?
I don't know because it's been so long since my kids played over there. But
Yeah, I feel like that park would maybe hold true during an apocalypse. It's just got to be there.
David Keith's boy was playing on one of the teams that my son played against over there. So I would sit in the bleachers with him sometimes. But anyway, so I think about you because you came to that game, and I was like, "Who's that gigantic guy that's got the same name as Michael McKenry?" Because I hadn't seen you since you went off to college, and you were like a rock, man. I mean, and so I was like, Michael, like, you've been working out and you're like telling me about Patron. And I know you're still like working with Patron, aren't you? I think I heard you mention him.
Yeah, he's become a mentor of mine over the years. I really thought when I was done with ball, I would go into, I was an exercise science major. I really thought I was going to go into some type of, performance-based. I still looking into a lot of it. But yeah, it's a love of mine. He kind of took me under his wing. He was really direct with me and really hard. And I really needed that, I think, at the time. And he put me in positions to work out with a lot of different people. I worked out with, Jim and Bill Haslam and Jimmy Haslam, that entire crew, a lot of different, big figures around Knoxville and outside. I'll never forget, I had a slap tear in my labrum. A guy named Dr. Pine came in. He's $1,600 a day. So like, I'm a minor leaguer. There's no way I could have afforded this, but he's there for the day. The Haslam family flew him in, and Charlie pushed him over to talk to me. I wasn't going to, overstep. I never wanted to do that. I didn't want to make it feel like he owed me. Everybody else kind of running over there. Well, he came up to me and he told something that fixed my arm. And it was the simplest thing ever. He goes, I love to do Olympic weightlifting, and a snatch is one of the moves. If you don't know what that is, look it up. He said, told me to snatch more, where other people were telling me not to do more, not to do this. You probably need to get these shots, or you need to have surgery. He told me to do something that everyone was saying, you're nuts. And it worked. And it was incredible. But that shows this guy was on a whole different level. He's working with LeBron. He's working with Kobe. And he's working the best of the best. And he's in. And he was able to say something that most people couldn't and not feel like it was going to take a risk, because he's watching me do it. He's like, that doesn't bother you? He's like, do it more. And he was all talking about the strength of the back of my, all the stabilizers behind my shoulder, and how all that blood flow will eventually create, a solidification of that muscle. And sure enough, like still to today, I can go out and throw 2 hours of BP, no problem. But Patron was a game changer for me. I was a sophomore. I knew I needed to take that next step. Went to Charlie during the winter. I was about 193 when I went in, say December 11th. I went back January 15th. No like enhancements, nothing you shouldn't take. I went back at 210.
Wow.
And I was running faster, jumping higher. And that year I was an All-American. I was drafted. So
I believe you're the fort, because I saw you at that sitting on the bleachers at that Little League
well,
game.
I really
and I was
appreciate
like,
it.
what happened to this guy, man? He's a rock. Well, look, anyway.
Until you mentioned being faster and stronger, everybody from the fall to February goes up by about 15 pounds. That's just because we're eating too much holiday food.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good thing, and I was able to kind of have a good power output too. So that was a big moment for me. And then, from 2005 into 6 off season until I was done playing, I never left him. He always drew up my workouts. I still talk to him. We're talking about possibly doing something a little bit wild. I've always wanted to compete in Olympic weightlifting. I turned 40 in March, and the numbers are starting to align where I may take a run and try to win a gold medal in that arena. And try to figure out if time will permit me to be able to do it. It's a lot of commitment. So.
Hey, you said something that I didn't realize. You said you throw 2 hours of BP a day?
No. Really? I said I've just done that every now and then. I did recently, and it didn't feel good the next day because, obviously I'm on the broadcast, so I don't get to go out and, throw all the time. But, it's a test to understanding my body, and because of, taking risks that a lot of guys wouldn't. Yeah. Because I had to, in life, you have to take risk to really receive a real reward. And, I was always willing to take, maybe a little bit more time to understand different things. So I feel like I have a really good awareness of like what my body needs, how it feels, and what it can maybe take, because I've gone to the threshold at times. I've even put myself in the hospital working out too much and doing stuff.
Careful.
So, well, I think that's how you learn. I think for me at least, I go to the edge of yikes on a lot of things so I can really kind of swallow it and understand it. I think we always have to be asking questions, whether it's in the gym, whether it's in the Bible. Anybody
that's going to hit a golf ball over my mom's roof and take that kind of risk, I mean, they're a risk taker, okay?
Well, yeah, because you were talking about shooting a rocket. That's hers.
Yeah, I got in trouble too. All right, just like you. All right, hey, so the other thing that I think of when I think of Michael McKenry's discipline is when you were playing pro ball, I was talking to your dad one afternoon out in the driveway, and he was like, I don't know why he likes it. I mean, he loves it. I would hate it. Like, I stopped playing with him in the backyard when he started hurting me when I missed the ball, bouncing on me. And it's like, I just like let his friends catch for him, because he was just throwing too hard. And I just like, I don't know, but he sits back there. He's a catcher. He's out there from the, break of dawn until dusk. And he's out there loving every second of it. And he's like, I would hate it, but he said he loves it. And I'm so happy for him. But, but so I think of that when I think about that, because, people think, man, I just wish I could play pro baseball for a living. And I was thinking about what your dad said about how hard it is. And so I wondered if you could speak to the discipline it takes to be a major league catcher like that.
So I can, and I think it's in anything you want to be great at. And fortunate, I was an elite company, like we talked about, 26,000 plus. There's more brain surgeons in the world than that. So that kind of puts it in perspective.
Oh yeah, I never answered you. This year, 1,213 people played Major League Baseball, and
That's
so
crazy,
if
right?
you think of out of 350 million people who live in this country, and there's like 1,200 of them that are allowed to play Major League Baseball, right? That's like you're the elite of the elite, Michael. I mean, it's pretty cool to think about, really, how you.
Yeah, it's very humbling. I didn't think about it until after I got out of the game, and now I talk to kids and I mentor kids to kind of help them, pull out their potential. But going back to the discipline, I think you have to have a little bit of naive understanding of what you're trying to do. So that way you're asking the right questions and you're pushing constantly. I was overcoachable. It was a bad fault of mine to not ask enough questions, put a little bit too much trust into people. But no matter what, if I did fall, it's almost like that's when I grew more. When I did get hurt, that was the times I grew more. And a lot of times that's when people, I don't know, curl up in their shell and they don't want more. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, that probably means you're wanting something else, because you should always have that type of drive for something. And luckily it was baseball is what I was good at. I really enjoyed the grind, probably even more than I did the actual game. Mm-hmm. I loved working on getting better and honing the skills, and I still do. I think growth is the greatest gift God gave us, honestly. I really do, because I think we should continue to grow. I mean, that's what he did constantly, right, with the disciples, just grow. So that's where the discipline came from. But if I had to say genetically, it came from my mom. My mom she had a tough life, grew up in foster care, was abused. A lot of different things she went through, and you'd never know it. She could have easily been, strung out on heroin, but she wasn't. She was an incredible mom. She gave me a better life than she had, and she worked diligently. She just pretty much retired. She's still not fully retired, but she's worked 60 hours a week my entire life, still showed up to take me to practice, even though we yelled at each other because she was always late. Therefore, I was late tonight because I took that after her too. But she's incredible. I think that's where I got it genetically, is like that can't stop attitude is like it's from my mom.
No, nobody knew you were late. You didn't have to tell on yourself. Okay. So
well, we're all about accountability, right?
That's
okay?
right.
And
yeah.
somebody does know. He's living upstairs.
I'm loving that you brought up this discipleship thing, because I want to read you this verse. Okay, so listen to this verse, because this is a tough verse for a lot of people to understand. Okay, we're going to try to break it down because of the life of Michael McKenry. I got a story that's tied to this. Okay, but here's this verse. John 14:13 and 14 says, "And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it." Now, Jesus said that to his buddies. He says it to us in the scriptures, like anything that you want. And you think about, you talked about how I asked for the Hall of Fame, but I forgot to say which one. But Jesus is like, well, I gave you what you asked for. But
yeah.
So, but a lot of people struggle with this.
Could still be worse, It could be in the...
True.
That's right.
The hot dog eating Hall of Fame or something?
Yeah.
Joey Chestnut. Anyway.
Exactly.
So Jesus, I mean, this is tough, because a lot of people are like, well, that's not true. You can't ask Jesus for anything. I mean, well, yeah, he says you can. So what's going on with that? It's a tough verse to understand, right?
Yeah, and I kind of come back to you guys. It's like, you may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. I think about Billy Graham when he talks about shame. When you really understand who God is, it's almost like you can't look at him. And I think that's when you really start to get into an area of where the darkness inside of you is being understood and the greatness and the light of God is being seen, but you just don't want to look at it. I mean, we've seen that throughout the Bible. But like, you may ask me for anything in my name and I will do it. Well, think about when you're in shame with your mom or your dad, right? It's hard to ask for anything, right? Who am I to ask? But I think you get to a point with your relationship and understanding that, hey, I'm not asking. I want to be closer to you. I want to grow. Give me that. And you're always starting to ask towards him instead of towards you. And I think we get that confused. Is like, it's not the want of the world. It's the want of him. And once you start asking that question from him is when I think you really receive it. But I think your heart and mind have to be open to how distant you are at times from, the grace and glory of God, because it's so real. We don't talk about it enough that like it's tough sometimes to pray when you just yelled at somebody driving home, or you looked at something walking down the street you shouldn't have. There's so many things, and that's internal, right? But I always think about my spine. My spine goes straight to the sky, right? I want to be in line with him, but this is the problem, and that makes a cross. The world's the problem. Everything around here that's just flowing is the problem. That puts shame in my heart, and it makes it kind of put that distance between. So that's why I think people don't understand it, because they're not looking at the faith of a mustard seed that they need to have, because that seems small, but it is that small like pool of like, I can't do anything. I shouldn't ask for anything. I want what you want for me.
I like that. I like the distance and the closeness. Sense? Yeah, because distance and closeness are all characteristics of the relationship, right? So the story I wanted to tell about you, Michael, is you mentioned that you played for Pittsburgh. You're a fixture in Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania, Yins, and all that. So my mom grew up in Western PA, which
small
now.
World. Yeah.
And so I grew up, going to visit in Western PA. I learned all my cuss words playing, cards with my mom and her uncles and aunts and stuff. But anyway, so she has a cousin, still lives there on a farm, and she was talking to her one day, and she was talking about her grandson was visiting, and man, is he pirate crazy. I mean, he and his dad go to all the games, and he's just totally pirate crazy. She goes, hey, let me talk to him. So she's talking to him. She goes, who's your favorite player? And he's like, Michael McKenry. And she goes,
oh, that's humbling.
She goes, Michael grew up across the street from me. He goes, you know Michael McKenry? And she's like, yep. He goes, well, he's like, I go to the fence every game, and I'm like, Michael, come sign my stuff, and he's like, whoosh, right into the dugout, My mom's like, listen, next time you go down to that fence, and when he's walking by, you say my name. You just shout my name out, And he was like,
yep.
Really? So he goes over, he shouts my mom's name out to you, and then do you remember the story? You remember what it transpired?
Yeah, I remember I stopped in my tracks after that. I don't know, because I went out early and signed every day for kids, and then I signed for all kids I could, but they had like a little barrier where he was standing, so like it's not an easy way to do anything. So they tell us to keep going on, but when he yelled that name, I was like, huh? What?
So here, check this out. Okay, can you see that whole picture? Is it off to the side? Can you see it okay?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay.
How cool.
So that's JD. That's her cousin's grandson. And that day that he called out to you, you're right, because look, there's the infield covers in your way.
Yeah, it's the tarp, and they usually have a security guard right there, and you sign up till about the tarp, and then you kind of peel off.
Yeah.
And they ask us to do that so it doesn't get weird where somebody will get on the tarp, but. Like it was such a humbling moment. It's like, wow, what a small world.
Yeah, so that's like 12 years ago or something like that. So
give or take 5, whatever.
Really, but so my point is though, see, he knew my mom, just like Jesus says, you ask for something, I'll put the word in with the Father, right? And so and my mom's like, hey, just shout my name out. I guarantee you, he's going to come over and see you. And little did he know the relationship you had with my mom was so tight.
Yeah, you brought the distance, right?
Yeah, you totally removed it. Yeah, so super
really,
cool,
really
right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I liked what you were saying about shame there, about where we can be afraid to approach God with our needs, because who are we, right? And there's the famous example of Jesus talking about how to pray is the Lord's Prayer, but elsewhere he says you should pray like a widow who has a an unjust, treatment. She has a case, and she's trying to bring it to the judge, and the judge is corrupt, and so she keeps appealing to him over and over and over again, and eventually, even though he's a corrupt judge, just to get her off his back, just to have some peace, he's like, all right, fine, I'll hear the case. And it's such a bizarre way on the face of it. Like, you wouldn't think, if I were going to make up a parable about how to pray, I'm going to make up this one about, some God is the corrupt judge in this case. It seems like an unnatural analogy, but I think the point is he doesn't want us to be too ashamed to bring it, or to give up, to persevere and just keep bringing our needs to him constantly.
Caleb, I absolutely love that. My wife kind of put a term on me in the last couple of years. She said persistence will always tear down the resistance. And
that's cool.
Name one person that has persistently pursued you that didn't care about you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what God, is trying to say there. Like, you care enough about this, unjust that's happened to you, and you care enough about yourself to continue to show up day in, day out to somebody that, maybe will never break, but you can't do that for me. And I think that's sometimes when we can bring that worldly understanding to, whether it's a parable or whether it's something that, the Lord said and read in the Bible, it just brings it more to that understanding of now. Sometimes that separation of how long it's been since Jesus walked this planet is tough for people to understand that, like, he was dealing with the same things. They just didn't have, as big of a maybe debt as our government does. It's all the same. There was somebody kind of leading the way. The hierarchy was there, but, you had to fight for everything you got. And I think that's what you have to do with your, relationship with Christ, because you're going to fight for your marriage. You're going to fight for your job. You're going to fight for what you care about, and that persistence shows. So I love that. I love that you shared that.
I will add to that. There's another little wrinkle to that parable. I love that parable. And if you think about it, why did the widow keep going back to that judge? Is because she knew he was the only one who could solve her problem. And if we would realize...
And how did she know that?
Because he was the judge in her town, right?
He
was the only one who had the authority to do it, right? And so if we would look at God that way, if we would say, the only solution to my problem right now is God, and we would go to him, just like she went back to that judge until she wore him out. And Jesus' point is like, but God's not going to wait till you wear him out. He just wants you to come to him and believe he's the only one who can help you. Put your total faith. Because the very end of that parable, Jesus says, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? And it's like, does anybody even believe in this stuff anymore? It's kind of like Jesus asking, do any of you believe this stuff? Really believe it?
Yeah, exactly. And too, like, to the point is, like, you guys probably know people that every time they, text you or call you, it's like, what do they need? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, that never bothers me if you're persistent about the why. Like, if it seems like it's becoming second nature, and they did a study on this, like, if you give somebody something once, like, they think is, oh, that's a gift. 2, they start to expect it. And 3, they almost demand it, like you owe it to them. And I've seen that over time. And think about Jesus, right? How often do we make him a laundry list? And I use the Bruce Almighty as the best example, right? He becomes God, and he's like, just stuff starts coming on his email box, and he's overwhelmed. But it's people just constantly asking for something that, they don't necessarily need. And 2, they haven't been in a relationship with that person. So Jesus has this separation of like, Sally's calling again. She wants her new hair product. Whatever it is, it's just a funny example, but that is a reality. Like, if you think about it, if I just asked you every time I texted you, it was just about one thing that I needed, eventually you'd be like, man, like, are we friends? Like, do we have any depth here?
Yeah.
We're like all season, we're talking about baseball, we're doing different things. And that creates a relationship, that creates rapport. And I think that's what Jesus really desires. It's going to be a long time to understand that. Like, the relationship side of it is so much more important than the depth of understanding, because he just wants our heart. He wants our intention. Yeah. And we don't spend enough time doing that. We spend a lot of time learning about it, but we don't spend enough time, seeking his attention like he does seeking ours.
It's an easy concept to misunderstand the promise that Jesus makes multiple times, that we can ask for anything in his name. Like, I'm sure, like, you guys probably had some kind of a similar moment when you were, like 10 years old reading that verse. I imagine every single boy after Star Wars has come out has read that verse and be like, oh man, I'm going to become a Jedi. Like some kind of dumb request. You think God's going to give me whatever I want. Yeah. And I reach across the room, and for some reason my shoe doesn't levitate, so it wasn't on board with the program there, But I think that's absolutely right. Is the intent behind it, and like we always talk about in the podcast, it's the whole focus here is the relationship with God. The point is God wants you coming to Him, not to anybody else, right? Not just once, right? But constantly, persistently, and you could counterbalance the verse with something like, "Don't take the name of the Lord in vain," right? Like, what are you asking for in His name? Bugatti or
yeah, exactly. How's that Bugatti going to glorify the kingdom? And if it can, kudos, man. Like, I love it. Because I think God calls us to be the best at what we do, and if you can use it to glorify, great. But if it's glorifying your worldly shine, that's not necessarily what you want.
You'd have to keep it garage most of the time anyway.
Yeah, the way the roads are sometimes. Yeah, you don't want to take that baby outside.
All right, so now I promised you we had a surprise for you. There's a little bit more. Okay, so this is your
humbling,
childhood.
Man. This is cool.
This is your childhood, Michael McKenry. I'm one of the few podcasters who could do this for you. Okay, so are you ready? Are you ready for this?
I don't know if I am ready.
Are you ready for Baby Michael?
Oh, this is great. Yeah.
Baby Michael. How about Baby Michael?
Baby Michael.
That's going to become, if only it was a meme, it was like a GIF and you were doing a little step, we could go viral with this right here.
I'm telling you, tell me the Snuggie didn't start there. Tell me that Snuggie didn't start there. Huh?
Where's the catcher's mitt? I thought you were born with one.
So that's all padded. That's the first invention we did, yeah. That's awesome.
All right, there's Baby Michael. Are you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Piano Man. Not many people know that Michael McKenry, before he wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, wanted to be a pianist.
That's actually the room upstairs here. That's in my grandma's living room.
Yes, got the honky donk too. Look at those overalls. Man.
That's some nice ones. And I like the two-tone. The two-tone, that's a bold move right there. That's nice.
A bold move.
The orange checkerboards weren't in yet. Nobody was wearing those. That was back then. It was green and blue, and so.
Yeah, I hope I had like knee-high cowboy boots on too, just to make that all work.
I don't think you're wearing much else right there, Commando.
Yeah.
That was before he was the Fort. He was Commando. All right, so then here we go.
Commando.
This is where he was like, "I want to be in the Hall of Fame." All right.
Looks like you said you were 5, right? That's where you remember the dream coming from? You look about the right age there.
It looks like I'm about to do something I shouldn't. Look at that face. Like there's a chance like I'm going to do something I should not do right there.
Wet leg coming up for Santa.
Well, not with Santa watching you.
Yeah. There's probably a chance I understood about Santa. And, maybe he had bad breath, and I was like, that's not Santa.
I scanned that picture in.
Come on, man.
I scanned that picture, and it says December 1989 on the back of it, so there you go. Pushing 5 years old,
so that's
right?
Probably four.
Yeah. All right, so here we go. You always wanted to be a giant.
Oh no. Oh, there it is.
Is that the glove you think that you were mentioning?
That's not the glove. The glove. I actually think I have it over here. I'll grab it here in a second. But I still have that Giants hat, and it has a giant blood stain right on the bill, and that's why I kept it. It's the first time I got nailed in the face and I made the play. And when, mom and dad moved out, when I moved out of my mom and dad's house, it's one hat I had to keep. So I kept a lot of my hats.
That is a keeper. You got nailed in the face and blood all over your hat? Gee whiz.
I think it'd be worth $1 million.
You missed the whole part of the story. And I made the play.
That is awesome. Oh, that's another. He's going to say it. I'll let him say it.
We were talking about persistence just a minute ago and discipline before. That was another saying Dad had from when we were all playing sports before we got older and fatter. He always said, finish the play first, and then you can be hurt.
Yeah,
exactly.
It doesn't hurt until after you throw the ball. That's what I used to say.
Yeah.
I didn't listen
and then
very well.
If it goes bad, it goes good. Like the attempt was there, so you're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I always felt bad as a coach, but I mean, I wanted to win too. I was like, it doesn't hurt till after you throw the ball. I mean, after you throw the ball, we'll come out, we'll rub it, we'll put ice on it, do whatever you need.
And you throw dirt on it. You just throw dirt on it, you keep moving on. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so we got one more picture in this of your childhood pictures here. You ready? This is not
One
really,
batting glove's got me just floored. One batting glove.
one batting.
Yeah.
That is cool. You started
That was in
the
style
Michael-
then.
You started
Michael
that
Jackson
too.
look.
You started everything. You started the overalls. You started one glove hand. Man. All right. So here's
Exactly.
Here's
Because I
Michael.
lost the other one.
Dream come true. You're playing college baseball. There's some little
Yep.
silver sticker on there. Your mom. I got these pictures from your mom. There's a little like baseball sticker on there. I don't know what that's from, but maybe you remember. But
I do not. Hopefully that was how I was seeing the ball that day. Jeez, that's a big ball.
yeah, you can get that one.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah,
to
that-
hit the camera. Actually, that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. That was actually my junior year. That was a really cool year. And you see the white on my hand? Talk about persistence.
Yep.
So I hit so much, my hands would bleed. So I would tape that up. My college coach would always give me the hardest time. And I was just like, I can't not wear it. Like, it ruins my batting gloves if I don't, because it'll bleed on my batting gloves. Eventually, about then, I had a callus that was, I don't know, probably almost 2-3 millimeters deep if you dug it out, because it was there. And if I start hitting again, it'll start to form immediately. Like, my body's,
Wow.
okay, we're doing this again. So tons and tons of swings. Yeah. Love the
All
Blue
right.
Raiders.
Yeah. So
That was
that's
cool.
really-
Thank you. That was really
yeah,
neat.
Yeah. Now here, I want to. Oh, hold on a second. I went too fast. So then you went to the pros, and so we followed you really close, and you had a stretch. And my brother and I were talking on the phone one day, and he said, "Hey, have you seen Michael's numbers right now?" He's like, "They're Ruthian." And so I went back. Now you know what I'm talking about, right? In 2012, you had a stretch from June 26th to August 4th where you hit 8 home runs in 21 games, which would be 61 homers in a season if you stretch that out to 160 games, right? You had 64 at-bats in those days, 25 hits. That's a 391 batting average. You were on fire. Like, what is that
Yeah.
like? What was that like for you? Like, we just got done talking about this whole, here's Michael. We talked about how ordinary people in the Bible do all these extraordinary things all through the Old Testament, you know, and God uses all these people in all these ways. You just grew up, you're just a kid across the street, all right? You're the curly-headed kid across the street from me. And then one day you're playing Major League Baseball and you're putting up numbers like this for a month. What were you thinking when that happened?
Well, that's what I always tell people about baseball is, like, you have to be ready for your moment. And during that moment, the starting catcher got hurt. Obviously, 21 games. It's a lot of days to only play with 21 games. I almost just accepted who I was and where I was. And I got prepared differently on a daily basis. And I'll never forget when it happened. You're going to hate this, but it happened when I went to Philadelphia. We're flying into Philadelphia. Rod Barras felt sick, and I ended up playing 4 games there, and I went bonanzas is the best way to put it. And that kind of started off, then the confidence started to rise, because at confidence, everything that I'd worked towards for that moment, just kind of stuck for a while. I ended up playing with a partial tear of my hamstring, about mid-August to the end of August, all the way through the season. Me and Jay Hay were both hurt to finish that season. But, something I never forget, because I really took ownership somewhere before that, maybe middle of May, early June. I took complete ownership of my career, fought back with the hitting coach that I didn't believe he had the right plan for me, and it worked. And it was the first time I really stood up for, what I believed and what I saw, and I accepted where I was. Instead of trying to be something I'm not or force that issue, I just kind of accepted, like, how can I, one, help the team, but also how can I make sure that I'm prepared to help the team in any way possible. So every day I showed up like I was going to play, and then I got some opportunities, and then I fell in love with being the guy that came off the bench and, got a chance to hit against Chapman multiple times in big situations. So it was more about just accepting and embracing, and then, just ruthlessly taking advantage of a situation. I got more opportunity in a short period of time.
So now, you mentioned Chapman there. Now you're in the clubhouse with him now on a regular basis. So you had that famous moment when Barmas, I think, got a double in front of you, and then he had no earned runs that whole season. And then you clubbed a double off the wall, I believe, and scored Barmas for the only earned run he had given up that year so far. So, like,
he had a save streak and a
You don't get a Christmas
scoreless
card
streak.
from him, right?
No, like he's such a competitor. Like he came up and patted me on the back when I saw him in spring training. And if you know anything about him, he's not normal. Like he looks like a Marvel character.
Oh, really?
He's absolutely shredded. He's got tattoos, but like he's not built like a normal pitcher, right? He's got pythons for arms, man. He spends more time in the weight room than anybody. You'd think he's more into fitness than he is pitching. And obviously he throws 105 still at 38. So yeah, that was a special moment. I always felt comfortable against him. Probably not now because he's got a nasty sinker and a split, which I would not necessarily love. But yeah, that was a cool moment.
Oh yeah, there's that viral video going around this season of him striking out.
Machado.
Yeah,
105.
and he just smiles at him like, what the heck?
Yeah, like a psychopath is what he does. And I'm like, I'm just walking back to the dugout. See you later, buddy.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
You mentioned Dad would hate hearing that started going into Philly. We might need to fully
I
explain.
love playing in Philly for some reason.
Okay, well now I don't want to say this since you were ripping on Philly. So we were
I didn't rip on Philly. Philly's one of my favorite teams.
No,
I think they do things above board comparative to other teams. The way they built that culture there, the way they fight for each other. They have guys that you guys can fall in love with. So,
I meant
Philly.
I meant ripping on us at the plate. You were you were tearing us up.
Well,
but then
no, it didn't start that way, guys.
No, but
my first time in
Yeah.
Philadelphia, you got to hear this. We just got done with the infamous play at the plate, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
We can if you want to.
We started a losing streak. We had a 3 or 4 game stretch. So I had Cole Hamels, I had Cliff Lee, I had Doc Holliday. I call him Doc Holliday, but Roy
I do
Holiday.
too. Hey,
all in a row.
We were at the Cliff Lee game.
I called my bat company and asked if I had a hole in my bat. I was swinging so bad.
Look.
And they sent me new bats because they laughed so hard because I struck out 9 times in 4 games. It was unreal.
Okay.
Yes, and you guys were there.
Yeah, you comped us the tickets. Okay, it was thank you, by the way.
That's the only thing, and they comped me a bunch of strikeouts.
You got the golden sombrero that day.
Yeah,
and so I took my camera, like I had this high dollar Canon camera, and I got the tele lens on there, and I'm like, oh, Michael's up, man. I'm filming this. I'm giving it to his mom, And I was like, no, I'm not.
Well, you got to tell him about
unreal. It was unreal. I think it's hilarious you guys were there, but yeah, it was unreal. That was one of those things, and I never will forget. I just got so mad, and I guess it was probably more than 9 times, probably 11 times in 3 games I struck out. I got so mad, and I just was like, all right. I was like doing everything I could in my mind to like, how can I get a hit? And I was like, I'm going to swing as hard as I can 3 times in a row, and I don't care what it is. And I hit a ball right off the top of the wall, and I was like, okay, I can hit it. It does exist. It's like Santa. All of a sudden, that snowball showed up. It was unreal.
So have you heard the story of what happened?
I don't think I've told him.
At this game?
I don't think I've told him this story.
No.
In that
that's the
picture,
story.
we're all wearing Pirates gear, but we actually were a hodgepodge. We were like changing shirts and hats depending on what was going on.
So
that's great.
So I had these. I didn't have this hat. I had my World Series 2008 Phillies
Show
hat.
off.
Yeah, that's what I'm wearing in the picture there. Okay, so I had a Phillies hat and I had a Pirates hat, and I was wearing the Phillies hat all day. But whenever Michael got up, I put on this Pirate. I went out and bought this Pirates hat, just so I could wear it whenever Michael batted. So you need me to burn this, okay? I promise I never wore it again. All right, but until now.
It's the face you had.
Well,
if
you
you
gotta
would have
keep
been
in
smiling like the other one, I probably would have gotten a couple hits.
Well, so here's what happened. You see those guys over my shoulder back there? They're a bunch of Phillies bums. Okay. They won't comp. I don't know if you know this or not, but when you comp tickets to the visiting team at Citizen Bank, they won't give them to you until like 15 minutes before the game. So we waited outside with the Richie Ashburn statue for like an hour. Like,
that's crazy.
And so we sat there. And finally, they called us. We got our tickets. We went in, and these Phillies bums were sitting next to us. So I was talking to him the whole game. They didn't even notice I wore the Pirates hat the first 3 times you batted, So you get up the last time, and I got this Pirates hat. I'm like, come on, Michael. And they look over at me, and they go, in Phillyese, they go, what the heck are you doing? And I was like, well, this kid grew up across the street from me. And they're like, so? And I was like,
it doesn't matter.
He goes, I go, he comped me my tickets. And he goes, man, all right, he comped you tickets, then okay.
You gotta, keeping in mind that every time any Philadelphia team makes it to the, playoffs, they have to put Crisco on the telephone poles so people don't tear the city down, no matter the result of the game. So we probably narrowly avoided being mobbed there.
I tell you what, was it? You've always been a Philly fan. I feel like Philly fans and Pittsburgh fans are just different.
Totally.
I don't know if it's something in the water in Pennsylvania or what.
It's like
but
the pretzels, right? The soft pretzels are better on one end of the state than they are on the other. But
it's just different, though. But the fans, though, they just love it, and they're ruthless. Like,
yeah.
they'll love you one day and hate you the next.
So now I got to tell you my favorite Phillies ruthless story, okay? I was working in South Jersey. I had a business trip, and there was a ball game that night, so I cut out of work. I drive to the stadium. Citizen Bank was only like a year or two old, and Kenny Lofton was playing center field. I love Lofton. My kids are huge Lofton fans. He's sent them autographed, super big cards and stuff. And so I'm super excited. Bobby Abreu's playing right field. Well, I go up to the window to buy a ticket. And I was like, I just need a single.
I just figured out what the story is.
And this lady's like, oh, there's the greatest single ticket in the whole park. Let me see if it's available. It usually is. She goes, yep, here it is. And they had a section at that time that went down to a point, and there was one seat like right up on the edge, right between the first baseman and right fielder. So I'm sitting there. I got Abreu right out in front of me. I got Kenny straight ahead of me. And I'm like, this is awesome, right? So I'm watching this game. Well, Lofton was the first one out on the field. He was out there stretching his hammies, running, and nobody else was out there warming up. And so then the game starts. Somewhere in the middle of the game, somebody hits a line drive straight at Lofton. He's booking in on it, and everybody's like, is he going to dive, or is he going to back up and catch it on a hop, And sure enough, he pulls up, stops, and catches it on the hop, throws it to second base. It's like dead quiet in the park because everybody's like, I thought he was going to dive, And some Phillies bum back behind me goes, hey, Lofton, get out of your wheelchair. And I'm like, man, there's no way he didn't hear that because it's dead quiet in there,
Yeah, you hear it. That's for sure.
And I was like, man, that is so brutal, but that's probably like a gift that guy has, like to come up with the perfect thing to say. That's just so terrible. But man, it was like, man, that guy's really talented,
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, it's funny though. I love it. Embrace who they are.
All right, so here, I got to ask you this. We were at this game, and so I told you I was taking all these pictures. And so here's a couple pictures that when they come up for you. The first one on the left has got Ryan Howard batting, and you're catching him, okay? Mm-hmm. Now I'm thinking, like, that's got not to be fun, right, to call pitches for Ryan Howard at the bank. Yep. Like, the fence is, like, right past second base, right?
Oh, the ball flies there, too.
Yeah.
Such a great place to hit. You can see the ball well because the big batter's eye. But the coolest moment for me against the Phillies was Jim Thome.
Oh, really? Yeah, I love Thome. There's another Indian.
Yeah, he came up to me like we'd known each other for 14 years and we were best friends. Oh, hi, Rook. How you doing? Welcome to the big leagues. And then the whole at bat, he just kept talking to me. Every time he came up, he'd say something to me.
Well, so that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, that's why I have Phillies fan with a question mark. You already said you are. But what's it like? I mean, so like Ryan Howard hangs on my Christmas tree. Okay, I got a number 6. I put him on there every year, man. He's like, a hero to me.
Man,
so
for a little while, man, he was something else, wasn't he?
Yeah, I know. There's a crazy story about him too. Have you ever heard the story about, he all you had to do was throw him a slider outside and he was done, like every time, right? Like you're catching.
Yeah, he had a hole like right above his belt close to him too. And you have to cheat to there. And as soon as that happened, it opened up everything.
So here's what happened, though, with him. He was terrible, like slump. And so he got to the off season. Have you heard the story? He called up Barry Bonds. Do you know the story?
I've heard bits and pieces of it, but probably not the normal story, just behind the scenes story. Yeah.
So he calls up Bonds and says, hey, man, this is after Bonds had retired. He's like, will you help me with my batting? Because, like, I'm struggling. I look like a fool up there. And so he's all right. So he comes and he says, look, first of all, he goes, get up to the plate. Stop standing way far away like you do. And then turn, you're standing wide open. Close the stance, okay? And, if they're going to hit you, you just, who cares, right? You get on first base. But he's like, then you're going to kill it. So he takes Bond's advice. He comes into spring training, and he was like Michael McKenry in June of 2012. I mean, he was crazy. And so then everybody's like, all right, Howard's got it figured out. You know, he took Barry Bonds' advice. This is going to be amazing. And then, like, he gets in there. He starts opening up his stance, backing away from the plate. I'm like, the greatest home run hitter in the history of baseball told you what to do, and you won't do it. I'm like, why? You know, kill me.
It's fear. It's fear, you know, because he was good at one time doing what he was, so he's holding on to that too. And you have to let go, especially as you get older. I talked to Andrew McCutcheon, a good friend of mine, about this a lot. And as you get older, you don't lose your ability, but you have to have a sense of your feel of that day. Because, like, there's days he shows up and he hits the ball as hard as he did in his MVP season, as far as he did in his MVP season. His hands are still as quick. His hand-eye coordination's top notch. But, like, there's also some days where his knee doesn't want to bend well. You know, his ankle doesn't have the same elasticity. And it's being aware of that and identifying and taking that win on that day. But also on the days you feel great, not to go away. And the biggest thing is not to deviate from a plan you've already created, but to adapt instead of deviate. And, you know, that's very hard to do. It sounds easy. It's almost easier to do it if you get hurt, and then you can kind of rebuild. But you, especially in today's game, you only have a small window. You don't get a lot of chances anymore. Like a lot of guys, you know, that are in the big leagues, you know, from my era may have gotten 2-3 more chances than most guys get now because they push you away because of analytics faster than ever. So you have to be able to adapt and overcome and compete when you don't feel good. And as you get older, that should be an advantage. But also you have to be aware that you don't move the same. You've had maybe a surgery or two, or, you know, there's a circumstance where, like, you know, you got jammed and your hand doesn't go well. Something I wish I would have done better throughout my career. You know, when I was doing as good as I possibly could, I was good as anybody. But when I was not doing as well, I had to minimize those failures and learn faster from them, and that would have extended my career and extended more success.
So let me ask you then, the picture on the right there, my favorite Philly during that time was Chooch. Oh, you know, it was Carlos Ruiz.
That's one of my favorites when he came to hit. Yeah.
One of my buddies called me one day. He was like, hey, I'm in the Philadelphia airport and I'm looking at Philly shirts. I'm going to buy you one. Who's your favorite player? And I was like, Ruiz. Get me a Ruiz shirt. And he's like, they don't have one. I was like, well.
They should. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, so what's it like? I mean, that's your position. And that guy called a perfect game with Doc Holliday. And so, like, what's it like, you know, being around a guy like that when he plays your position to the level of like a rolling a perfect game in bowling there, right? You know, it's like,
yeah, it's honestly humbling because that was my era, right? Like, so I watched that perfect game and, you know, played with AJ Burnett, who Holliday mentored. So I knew what type of human being, you know, Holliday was. Like, he was terrifying, very, very, like, he had the Mamba mentality before the Mamba mentality was actually real. He went after it a different way. And I think what Chooch doesn't get enough credit for is how he's able to balance the personalities. Like Cole Hamels, pretty boy, you know, Cliff Lee and Holliday, you know, fighting to be a little bit terrifying, but, you know, they had different quirks about him, but he was always able to pull out the best out of those guys.
What a rotation.
He knew when to sit back. Yeah, it was incredible
just listening
rotation.
to you call those names, I mean, it's like our rotation
yeah,
now.
Papelbon as a closer. Like, you guys had some really, really good teams. But, yeah, I thought Chooch was underrated. And it was cool walking up to the plate because, one, I got to see that he was maybe eye to eye with me. I'm going to say I was a little bit taller. Maybe my cleats were a little bit sharper that day. But that was neat. Same thing when I met my, you know, childhood, you know, idol was, you know, Pudge Rodriguez. And he's actually shorter than me, and he wasn't on the juice, so he wasn't that big. And I'm like, I thought this guy would glow in the dark. This is weird. But it was really neat. And those are the moments you never forget, you know, like where you can slow it down just enough. And those moments I got to, and, you know, I really respected the way he went about it. And, you know, somebody I looked up to that I thought, yeah, you know, I could carve out, you know, some time just like him because, you know, his gift of doing that is something I took a lot of pride in. So I watched him a lot.
So Pudge was your childhood hero there, your baseball hero?
Yeah, and Javi Lopez, who crazy enough, was in camp with me, my very first big league camp in 07.
Oh, wait.
throwing-
We forgot to mention no Braves. No, we're not allowed to talk about. No, I'm just kidding, Mike.
Well,
But
I'm going to throw it out there.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I got to spend time with him and Marcus Giles, two guys I just like idolized growing up. You know, Marcus Giles would just stay in on any double play and make the play. Found out that he wore soccer shin guards, you know, to take that, you know, heat, because he's a tiny dude, and just wiry, never stopped, worked really hard, and jacked out of his mind for a little guy, looked like Mighty Mouse. And then, you know, Javi Lopez, who for me looked like a Greek god, just huge. We're playing catch. He was so nice to me until we started blocking, because everything hit me in the chest and everything hit him in the arms. He's like, I hate you little guys. But yeah, it was neat, man. Like it was cool to run into people, you know, throughout my career that I got to watch and I got to see play. Never forget the first time I played against Jeter. I didn't realize how big he was. I was like, he's a what? He's
he
a
seems small.
shortstop? He's huge.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about 6'4" shortstop.
Wow.
I mean,
Man, that is big.
6'3", 6'4" shortstop. Like, you just didn't see that very often coming up in the minor leagues. The way he moved too was just.
Well, they all look
smooth.
like ants
It's
down
just-
there on the field, you know, from the fans' perspective.
Yeah, they're not. I felt small at times around some of those guys, but you know, another really cool moment. It's the first time Judge and Stanton got in the box. Dude, like Stanton's stance is so wide, it felt like he was over top of me. How big he was, you know, because he's 6'6". You know, at the time he's probably 240 with like zero fat, and then Judge was so big. I was like, what do we do with this guy? Like, down and away. Let's see if he can hit it, big guys. Before he made some adjustments and he couldn't hit it. Like, there's no way this dude can hit this ball. It's got to look like it's from, you know, the Twin Towers. Like, that can't be a strike. That's a ball. You know, so it's interesting. I always ask those big guys different questions, because I always think, like, how would I teach somebody like Aaron Judge, or how would I teach somebody that's 6'6" hitting? Because, you know, I'm 5'9". I understand outside it looks pretty good to me. But to them, it's got to look so far, if it's down at the bottom of the zone, that's so far away from their eyesight, if you think about it.
Yeah.
You're talking about another foot.
They're not allowed to
always
use a
ask,
longer bat, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, technically, yes, they can, as long as it's within the rules and regulations of MLB. So, yeah, they could do it.
So that Bugs Bunny episode where the guys have the big, you know, logs with the handle on there, that's legal?
Yeah, as long as it has the proper grain, it's the quality of wood.
The
Yeah,
Gas House
you can
Gorillas,
use
I
it.
think that is the Gas House Gorillas episode.
That's
they're
impressive.
just- they're
Strike one,
just-
strike two, three, you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there just gets
I
to be a
remember.
physical limit on what you can swing fast enough.
Yeah, and they're throwing so hard nowadays. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's not that they're throwing, because in context it's the same, right? You get used to 94 is no different than 92 when you see it all the time. It's the same concept, because you're seeing it more regularly, so you get used to it. But like, it's the emphasis on that velocity that I think is the biggest thing right now, because everybody can ramp it up to about 98. So that's not a separator like it used to be. You're seeing it all the time. It's crazy.
I think people saw Tim Lincecum throwing that fast, and they were like, man, if he can do it, I surely can.
Talk about
Man, well, he was
pretty boy
special, too.
pitchers.
Yeah.
He must have had
Special,
like flexibility like Michael Phelps or something. I don't know how a guy like that skinny and, you know, whatever could
He was
throw that.
hyper mobile.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys that can move like that and do different things are hyper mobile, and they have to spend a lot more time working on their strength. It's a gift if you really, really focus on your strength, but if you don't, eventually you're going to stretch so much. So like his tendons started to stretch, and he had to pull him back in. That's why he made that comeback at one point. But yeah, a lot of times you get hyper mobile, and it's almost, you get too much elasticity in your arm, and it becomes, you know, almost like you can't feel it. It seems like so.
So, Michael, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to talk about? Like what's going
No,
on?
I
With you?
mean,
Like, we haven't talked about Hold Your Cutter at all. We haven't talked about any of the stuff you got going on social media. Do you want to give out like any kind of, you know, addresses and stuff for your different media you've got going on?
Yeah, Hold My Cutter is a podcast I started with Greg Brown. So it was built around tradition. So Steve Blass, who's an iconic figure in Pittsburgh. There's a really cool picture out there. Look it up when he won the World Series, I believe in '71. He's jumping and Manny's got him, like this. And then he also goes and gives his dad a hug. It's really, really cool. But they used to smoke a cigar in a non-smoking area right outside the booth in the ballpark. And they would talk about life. They'd talk about politics. They'd talk about everything. And it was their way to kind of get their mind off of what they're about to do. The Pirates have obviously had a lot of losing seasons. Don't laugh, Tim. It is a reality. 20 in a row until 13.
The losingest team of all
Yeah,
time.
the Phillies have more losses than any team. I always told my
any sport.
Somebody's got to be first.
Hey, I told my boys I own it. It's like if you're good at something, you own it, and come on, try to catch us. Somebody try to
Fair
catch us.
enough. Yeah, fair enough. So it started then, and then Steve Blass retired, and I was on the broadcast, and I went out with him one day, and I'd never smoked a cigar, and went out and smoked with him, and he poured some wisdom into me, and he shared with me like he hadn't before, and then the broadcast was really good. You could just tell there was a different rapport. So over the years, every now and then we do that. And we just came up with the ideas like, why don't we extend this into a conversation with somebody?
Yeah.
And allow people to come in. So it started out where we invited people out there. And then it became where we, go talk baseball, talk about Pittsburgh. We've done politics. We've done, religion, a lot of different things. Anybody's welcome. It just has to have a tie to Pittsburgh in some way. Because we want to let people know how cool Pittsburgh is and what type of people it has birthed over the years. Because, man, it's so neat to hear everybody's story kind of wrap around the idea of hard work. And I think in today's game and life, people want it without the work. And I feel like the 38, 9, 10 people we've, or 40 people we've probably talked to, they've all had the same concept. They just showed up over and over again until it worked out.
The greatest Pittsburgh Pirates fan I ever knew was my great-grandfather, William Hartzell. And just like you, I always thought he was my great-grandfather. And then I found out, like when I became an adult, that he wasn't actually the dad of all my grandmother, that he had run out on him, and Bill Hartzell had married my great-grandmother and helped her raise the kids. And, that made me admire him even more,
Exactly.
I loved him. I loved him already. You talk about cigars. He was a cigar smoking guy, and he was the first person I ever knew that had cable TV. And the reason he had cable so he could watch baseball. We'd go to his apartment, man. He had a cigar going. He had a baseball game on, So it was
that's an old school mentality. Yeah, it's really, really neat.
Yeah. So and we used to call him, because we were Phillies fans. He was Pirates fans, and so we'd always call him when we were playing each other and give each other a hard time. But yeah, I loved him.
That's absolutely outstanding. And to wrap up, me is at the Fort McKenry on every platform. If you're looking at social, reach out, ask questions and whatnot. And anytime you guys want to do this, say that again.
I was saying Fort McKenry without the H.
Without the H, Fort McKenry, but MCK, not MCH. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll leave the actual Fort McKenry and the military base to itself, and we'll step over here. So.
Yeah, great. Well, man, thanks for spending time with us tonight, Michael. I know you had your own podcast earlier. Speaking of Hold My Cutter, and so. Hey, one thing I want to say, I did listen to your episode with Derek Shelton. I thought it was really great.
I thought he was outstanding, and I think, I don't know when you guys are putting this out, but we just got done with the presidential election, and they started doing long form podcasts with, like, especially the Republican side.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends on the fence, and they literally went and listened to some of these things because it was some of their top hosts, and they felt like they got to know the people better. So, like, I think the same thing with Derek Shelton. You don't know much about the man until he can just sit there and just kind of talk, and we create an atmosphere that's kind of, low key and chill. And you could see him as the podcast went on to kind of just, whew. And why that's so cool to me is used to, when I first got to pro ball, the manager wouldn't leave after the game. The guys wouldn't leave after the game. They would kind of sit there and talk about the game, talk about life. And you built this camaraderie that's just different. Nowadays, you're lucky if you can get in there before everybody's gone after the game. I mean, I don't even know if some of these dudes shower at times. They get out there so fast.
Makes me think of like the Yankees dugout. You always think of Joe Torre, and then what was the pitching coach? What was his name? Was it Mazzilli or something like that?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, and they would just sit there, and they looked like they were like sitting around on their porch, like spitting sunflower seed shells, you know. And
Yeah,
it's just like,
and there's something to that, right?
They're coaching Major League Baseball. It's like, what's that? What's
Yeah,
going on?
but like think about it. Like you guys in life, like I have a hard time separating sometimes when I was playing, but I knew if I sat there, and I used to call it cold tub therapy, and me, I'm going to use Colorado as the best example. Me, Justin Morneau, usually Nolan Arenado would come in and out, but me and Morneau and one or two other guys would float in and out. We'd sit there and we'd break down the game. And then when we got out, about 10 minutes, sometimes it was 20, sitting in the cold tub. One, we didn't know it was cold. And two, we could walk away, go shower, and actually shower it away and move on to the next day, good, bad, or ugly. And that was a big help. We talk about it as I do as a coach now. I was like, you know, you got to shower this one off and move forward. But what does that actually mean? What does that entail? You know, I think it goes back to creating relationships and finding ways that make you tick, but also make you thrive. And you have to look at it first. So you just try different things and try to figure out what kind of makes you your best self. And that was one thing that really helped me as I got older, because there's a lot of uncertainty in everything. And when things aren't going well, it's good to kind of walk through it and get someone's advice or just someone's ear. And then remember the same thing, when someone needs that, you do the same thing for them. But when you do it on a daily, basis, I could go home and be my better self, be the husband I needed to be. I wasn't carrying the jersey home, is what I would say. I wanted to be two different people. When I walked on the field, I wanted to be the player. When I went home, I wanted to be the husband. So it really helped. I think that's something that is really important. That's what I love about the podcast scene. And for you guys too. Like, I hope to come on again and we get deeper into the Bible. I want to learn from you guys. You guys are, in my opinion, experts. But like, I don't think there's enough of this where you brought a story together of me with the Bible, but I'd also love to dig in a lot more, because it's something that's just so missing in today's society.
I mean, I'll just put a plug out then for ours, and while we're talking, I mean, most people who are watching would already know, but we're Biblocus, and if you go to YouTube, it's at Biblocus, but that's the only platform we've got going right now, really. But we're just trying to get a body of work out there, and then we're gonna try to publicize it on some of the other platforms. But we've got 33 videos out there right now on the Old Testament. We got 9 left to finish out the Old Testament. We did 4 on the Book of Psalms, and 1 on every other book. And so, actually, we did 2 on Genesis. So yeah, we're just we're drilling through it, and you can pretty much learn something about every book of the Old Testament now, just by starting our series and going through it. So, and it's long format,
cool.
so there's a lot of meat there.
Well, keep it up. I'm interested to see where it all goes, because you guys do a great job, and I love, like I said, father-son dynamic is off the charts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the long form podcast has just it's not a suitable replacement, but it has kind of replaced those in-person conversations that sort of just dropped off with the advent of the smartphone and social media.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Well said.
Well, loved having you on, and we'll have you on again. And if you got other people in mind that you want to push our way, you can give them my contact information, and that would be awesome.
Done. Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
it's really cool. Thank you.
Well, we love you, brother. So thanks.
Yeah, love you too, guys. Keep growing, and thank you again, and God bless.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.